In Arthurian legend, there is a famed table that acts as a meeting place for all those deemed worthy to sit in King Arthur's court. This table is a symbol of equality. There is no head of the table, meaning that all that gather here are of equal status. This meeting place is aptly called the Round Table. King Arthur and his knights are written to have had adventures throughout Britain, more mythical in nature than historically based. In one of these tales, we meet a man named Gildas the Wise. Caradoc of Llancarvan wrote about how Gildas came into contact with King Arthur on multiple occasions, one time being when Arthur executed Gildas's brother, Hieel. Hieel would swoop down from Scotland and fight battles and carry off spoils like a pirate. During one of these raids, he was pursued and killed by King Arthur for his crimes. When news of his brother's murder reached Gildas in Ireland, he was greatly grieved, but was able to forgive Arthur and pray for the salvation of his soul. In Caradoc's version of Gildas's life, he was said to have been the son of a king, then sent to study literature in his youth, away from his homeland for 7 years. When he returned, he brought back an extensive library with him, and was sought after as a master teacher. Caradoc states that Gildas became the most renowned teacher in all the 3 kingdoms of Britain. Very little is truly known about Gildas, though, and what is known isn't certain. The story of St. Gildas is so full of inconsistencies and absurdities that many writers have had to solve the difficulty by supposing that there were several saints of the name Gildas, whose histories have been mixed up altogether. What is known, though, is he was a 6th century British monk, best remembered for his scathing religious criticism titled De Excidio et Conquisto Britanniae, which recounts the history of the Britons before and during the coming of the Saxons, condemning the sins of his contemporaries, both secular and religious. He was renowned for his biblical knowledge and literary style. Gildas was educated at a monastic center, possibly in South Wales, under St. Illtyd. He became a renowned teacher, converting many to Christianity and founding numerous churches and monasteries throughout Britain and Ireland. Originally, he was supposed to be educated in liberal arts and divine scripture, but elected only to study the holy doctrine instead, and to forsake his noble birth in favor of a religious life. After completing his studies under Illtyd, Gildas went to Ireland, where he was ordained as a priest. He then returned back to his native lands in northern Britain, where he acted as a missionary, preaching to the pagan people and converting many of them to Christianity. He was then asked by a high king to restore order to the church in Ireland, which had altogether lost the Christian faith. Gildas obeyed the king's summons and traveled all over the island, converting the inhabitants, building churches, and establishing monasteries. Miracles he performed include healing those suffering with palsy, dropsy, and even blindness. It's said that once he destroyed a dragon by prayer alone. Gildas is regarded as the earliest British historian. Copies of his writings are preserved in the Cambridge University Library. His work was a recounting of British history, while also rebuking British kings and clergy of his time. His purpose in writing was to illustrate the sins of his people, and to show them a better way. Born from a noble family, became a scholar, a famed historian. Afterwards, he settled into a solitary life, but people still flocked to him. From a deserted fort, Gildas creates a monastery and heals many people. After he passed, he was given a Christian burial, then placed beneath the altar of a church. In the lands between, there is a man named Gideon Offnir, the all-knowing, the leader of the Round Table Hold, and a profound source of knowledge for the tarnished. He could be found most often at his desk, absorbed by an endless amount of books in his personal library. He possesses knowledge of the Shard-bearers, as well as most of their locations. A true historian of the lands between, excitedly waiting for any updates to Tarnish finds, to better understand the full story of his world. He understands grace and tells you to follow it. Gideon states that as Tarnished, you must answer the call of grace, acting in with complete faith of the Golden Order. He, like Gildas, shows an intense faith and belief, converting new Tarnished into his ideology. It's stated that he gained true knowledge directly from the 2 fingers, within the text of the Lord's divine fortification incantation. After killing Melania, an envoy of the outer god of Ra, he rewards you with this incantation. Like Gildas, he is a true believer in the religion that he is a part of, and rewards you for defeating outer gods to maintain the greater wills and Golden Order's supremacy. As for condemning the sins of past rulers like Gildas, Gideon reports his disdain of the rulers of the lands between, the demigods that have led to the destruction of the order that was once in place. For Godric, he says, a grotesque old fool, grasping for power. For Rykard, he says that he has committed the grave sin of blasphemy, marking himself as an enemy. And he doesn't mince words when describing Mog as a delusional maniac. Who is Gideon Offnir? He most certainly understands the power of bloodlines, something nobility is taught at a very young age, as he keeps Nefeli Lu close, even acting as her foster guardian, as he knows her lineage connects her to the first Elden Lord. The individual you'll find guarding Gideon in front of the library door is Ensha, who wears the royal remains armor. It states that he was once an ancient lord, the soulless king. Theoretically, judging from the lack of speech and willingness to act out on behalf of his master, he could be a puppet, once royalty, now serving as a tool for Gideon's use. Knowledge was not easily obtained in the Middle Ages. It's known that peasants didn't typically read or write. Usually only nobles or clergy were taught the art of reading and writing. For more evidence that Gideon has royal heritage, like Gildas, we turn to his full name, Sir Gideon Offner. Having the title Sir means that he was once a noble that gained knighthood from the touch of a sword by the king or the queen. Being knighted and deemed important enough, Gideon Offner is given a Christian burial, as seen in the opening cinematic, lying once covered in a thick casket, while other tarnished lay on the ground. This more traditional burial style during war is an honor, just like how Gildas, in both versions of his life, was given a Christian burial for his accomplishments pre-death. One version even says that Gildas's corpse was placed on a boat that sailed around for 3 months, then later found having crashed into a creek. Local men decided to move his body and give him a proper burial. My question to you is this. Gideon mentions that once you gain a great rune, the inner chamber doors will open up to you, as you will have earned an audience with the two fingers. We know that Gideon was directly taught by the two fingers. So, did he have a great rune to earn access? Whose great rune did Gideon use? This concludes today's topic of St. Gildas the Wise. I appreciate you joining me today.